Welcome to F1 Briefings, where we break down all things F1. I'm Alex Harrington, and today we're diving into 4 of the biggest stories in Formula 1 today. First up, Cadillac's restriction starts this year. Second, Red Bull has confirmed an interest in signing Carlos Sainz in the future. And third, Red Bull has lost a $150 million sponsorship. And finally, F1 begins a $1.5 billion partnership for 2025. But before that, Happy New Year to you from me and the team. Let me know down in the comments if you got any good F1 related Christmas presents. I didn't, and I'm very unhappy about it. So, here's the deal. Cadillac's F1 team is set to have the joint highest aerodynamic development allocation in 2025. But this could be seen as a bad thing. Why? Because their unrestricted development period has officially ended as of January 1st. But don't worry, we'll explain what that means in just a bit. First, let's talk about how we got here. Cadillac's Formula 1 entry has been years in the making. Initially, it was a project spearheaded by Michael Andretti under the Andretti Global brand. Fast forward to now, and it's transformed into a fully Cadillac-branded team with General Motors backing. Andretti himself is no longer involved. Mario is on the board of directors though, and TWG Global has stepped in to manage the operation. TWG Global, by the way, is led by Dan Towers, Andretti's former business partner, and backed by billionaire sports investor Mark Walter. You might know Walter as a co-owner of the LA Dodgers and Chelsea Football Club. Together, they've rebranded the UK-based team as Cadillac Formula Racing. This is a huge shift and it reflects the serious progress made in finally securing the coveted 11th spot on the grid. Now let's talk about the nitty-gritty, the aerodynamic development. Until recently, Cadillac enjoyed unrestricted wind tunnel and CFD testing because their F1 entry hadn't been officially approved. But as of 2025, those days are over. Cadillac will now be treated as an equal last team under F1's aerodynamic testing restrictions. This means they'll have 115% of the baseline allocation, the same as Sauber, giving them maybe a slight edge over teams like Williams, Haas and VCARB. This extra testing allowance could be critical as Cadillac ramps up for its 2026 debut. But what about the budget cap? Well, Cadillac will be subject to the same budget cap as other teams starting in 2025. While that'll level the playing field, it's worth noting that the team has already been hard at work on their baseline 2026 car, free from restrictions for several months. However, most team principals believe this head start won't give Cadillac an overwhelming advantage. Here's where things get even more interesting. Cadillac's current focus is entirely on the 2026 regulations, while other teams now have to juggle the 2025 season development as well as the new regulations. This gives Cadillac a clear path to pour all of its resources into 2026. But this isn't going to be smooth sailing. No, they'll need a mature team and robust facilities to make the most of this. And speaking of resources, Cadillac's deal with Ferrari for engines and gearboxes and rear suspension will also lighten their load. This partnership is a temporary solution though. General Motors plans to debut its own engine by the end of the decade, aiming to establish itself as a full works team. So what's next for Cadillac? The team's monumental task is clear. Build a competitive operation from the ground up, attract top talent, and take on the best teams in F1. Their journey will be anything but easy. But with names like Graham Loudon, who's the former Virgin and Manor team boss as team principal, they're off to a strong start. Now let's get into our second big story, Carlos Sainz's potential future with Red Bull Racing. Red Bull team principal Christian Horner has expressed interest in signing Sainz down the line. Try say that 10 times fast. This comes just weeks after Ferrari's Fred Vasseur hinted that Sainz could potentially return to the Maranello outfit in the future. Sainz joined Williams Racing last season after leaving Ferrari to make room for Lewis Hamilton. The 30-year-old had one of the best seasons of his career in 2024, his last year with Ferrari after a 4-year stint, but the Red team had to make room for the 7-time world champion, and Sainz was, as you'd expect, chosen to leave instead of Charles Leclerc. After departing Ferrari, Sainz was reportedly in talks with several teams, Red Bull, Mercedes, Alpine, Sauber, and obviously Williams. Red Bull ultimately decided to promote reserve driver Liam Lawson to replace Sergio Perez, but Horner has admitted that the door isn't closed on Sainz. He said, "Carlos is a great driver and options still remain open with him in the future. He was considered, and in many respects you'd say there was a real logic to signing Carlos, but we made the choice to look internally and put belief in the junior program. As you'd expect, they shovel so much money into it and they have a second team specifically for it. You'd hope they would do that. That attracts more juniors because they see a pathway to Formula One, and if we'd gone outside the program, that is not sending the right message. Because there is so much competition now for young drivers, even at the age of 13 or 14 between the teams. That is healthy, because it's investing in young talent, but by joining the Red Bull program, you see a clear pathway that if you deliver, pretty much guarantees you'll get to Formula One. We would always prefer to give the opportunity to the progression of the junior program." Alright, in the end, Carlos signed with Williams after being impressed by their ambitious plans for the future, presented by team principal James Vowles, very impressive. Despite parting ways with Ferrari, Vasseur also admitted that Sainz's return to the team isn't off the table. He said, "Of course, we've already talked a couple of times about this. This is a very small world. There are only 10 teams, or now 11, only 6 or 7 top drivers. You never know what's going to happen in the future. But most of us, both Carlos on his side and us on our side, have to focus on our projects. We don't know what will happen in 2027, 2028, 2029. And now let's turn to our third story of the day. Major changes at Red Bull Racing ahead of the 2025 Formula One season. The team has seen a significant shakeup, starting with the end of their $150 million sponsorship deal with cryptocurrency exchange Bybit. The unexpected termination of this partnership has impacted Red Bull's sponsorship portfolio and, of course, its finances. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen is coming off the back of a stellar 2024 season, where he clinched his 4th Formula One Drivers' Championship. Perez, who joined Red Bull in 2021, ended his stint, as we've already discussed, with the team after a challenging 2024 season, finishing 285 points behind Verstappen. His replacement, Lawson, has been promoted from the Red Bull Junior program, and his prior experience with Red Bull's sister team makes him a promising addition to the lineup, with Marco saying he has the strongest mental state out of their options. The loss of Bybit's sponsorship has added another layer of complexity to Red Bull's preparations for 2025. The 3-year partnership, worth $150 million, like I said, played a big role in the team's financial structure, but Red Bull is still optimistic about the upcoming season. Their failure to secure the Constructors' Championship last year has inadvertently granted them additional wind tunnel time and CFD simulations, which will be instrumental in developing this year's contender, the RB21. Max Verstappen said, "We have, I guess, positive. We won the drivers, didn't win the constructors, so we gained a bit of wind tunnel time. In a way, maybe that's positive." Our final story of the video, Tag Heuer is set to replace Rolex as Formula One's official timekeeper starting in 2025. This marks the end of Rolex's decade-long tenure, which began in 2013, and it also coincides with Formula One's 75th anniversary celebrations, making it a pretty big occasion for both brands. Tag Heuer, part of the LVMH group, brings a storied history of involvement in Formula One, having previously held this role from 1992 to 2003. The new partnership is valued at $1.5 billion over 10 years, reflecting a substantial investment in the sport's future. Tag Heuer's legacy in motorsport dates back to the 1960s and 1970s, so they know what they're doing. Another LVMH brand that I'm finding very difficult to pronounce, Moet and Chandon, is also returning as the official celebratory drink of Formula One this year. I wish I had a celebratory drink. It will be replacing the Ferrari Prosecco used on the podium at the end of races. And that's a wrap for today's episode. It's going to be a long but exciting F1 season, so make sure you're subscribed, like this video while you're down there, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much.